Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I am playing the GOBOs. So no, not the Greenskins. I am actually playing an entirely Goblin army, with the exception, of course, of the Ragnarok Spiders, which technically I think qualify as Goblins, as they are kind of rode and piloted by Goblins. So hopefully you guys can forgive me for that transgression there. But as far as my army composition goes, I have a front line of Night Goblins here. So these guys are... I mean, again, you are playing an all-goblin army, so it may not be optimal, but they're pretty decent against the Empire, because Empire, as you guys can see, will often bring spearmen and relatively low-tier frontliners. Granted, there will be greatswords in the mix. The Night Goblins will do pretty good against spearmen, and also the poison is going to be pretty cost-effective against greatswords, in my opinion. So I have a front line of those guys. I have a secondary line of Night Goblin Archers mixed in with several groups of standard Goblin Archers, so... I was running a little tight on funds. I actually really wanted to do like a full Night Goblin army, but unfortunately I couldn't quite afford it, so I had to cut corners, guys. So the Goblin Archers there, 2 Ragnarok Spiders. And then, of course, staying in theme, I did get a Goblin Great Shaman as my Lord. So I do have the Little Wah, so definitely a fan of it. The Itchy Nuisance is pretty good, and Sneaky Stabbin' is also quite strong, so we'll be putting those to good use in this battle. But he is very, very weak. Definitely very subject to being dove by the Empire Death Squads of Karl Franz and the Empire Captains over there, so I'm going to have to be very, very careful with him this battle. Also in the back, I have Goblin Wolf Riders, and then with them, I have 2 Goblin Big Bosses with, of course, mounted on the Spiders, and of course, they both have the double potions, the Foolhardiness, as well as the Potion of Toughness to ensure that they get the full healing out of that. So, big fan of these guys. They're great duelists, great at chasing down Empire heroic units, and if Karl Franz, for example, does land and come after one of my units, and if you can then poison him and allow your stronger units, well, stronger in this case being the Ragnarok Spiders, to envelop him, you can get a lot of good value out of that. And also you can see my poor lads here taking some cannonball fire, but they're troopers. We also have 2 groups of Vanguard deployed Goblin Wolf Riders on the flank, so these... I love Goblin Wolf Riders. They're honestly one of my favorite units in the game. For how much you're paying for them, they just bring so much to the table in terms of periphery threats, cycle charging pertinent units in the back. Just a very, very good unit. So as far as my opponent's army goes, the Empire opponent, he has Karl Franz, 2 Empire Captains, of course, all rocking potions. He has front line of Spearmen, and then he has 2 groups of Greatswords, so he was probably accounting for Black Orcs, but what's nice about playing these off-meta armies, like the lads over here, is that, he is going to, assume I'm going to bring Black Orcs, and Greatswords aren't going to be that good at cutting through the lads, simply because they're meant to take out heavily armored, kind of low-density units, and against Night Goblins, it's going to take them quite some time to get through them, so hopefully that, thought process will work out. 2 groups of crossbowmen, 2 great cannons, which are going to be really good against my Ragnarok Spiders, unfortunately. And 2 groups of flagellants, which I really like. Flagellants are, they're decent against big ends, and they're pretty good at holding up areas that you need them to, because they're not going to run or, leave things out to dry. They will definitely fight to the death to protect whatever they're near, so very fun unit. And then, of course, he has the Silver Bullets, so very cool unit. They do have stock, so I actually wasn't aware of them. But also on that same note, when he's looking at my army right now, he's not seeing these Night Goblins. As you guys can see, they're all hidden. All he's really seeing is like these Spiders and some Goblin Archers, so to him right now, it's probably a little confusing as to what's going on. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm advancing on my opponent immediately, and I'm also advancing on both flanks. So you can see the Goblin Wolf Riders over there, as well as this second group kind of creeping through the woods. So it's very easy to just miss these. If you're not looking at the mini-map up here, and like this guy's kind of sneaking around the back, it happens to me all the time. I won't even recognize that something's coming. But the Doom Divers are coming in here and doing some excellent damage to these crossbowmen, already taking out several models. On that same note, they're also going after these crossbowmen over here. I'd like to take out missile units first in regards to, using my Doom Divers. But again, Greatswords, if I did have Black Orcs, I'd probably be targeting the Greatswords to make sure that he didn't have that armor piercing to deal with my forces. So you can see, though, the Doom Divers are just so accurate. A lot of times, Goblin Rock Clobbers will just miss and kind of, hit, just kind of let you down. But the Doom Divers, they usually will hit home. And also, they're pretty good at chasing down heroic flying units. So I am getting my Night Goblin, not my Night Goblins. I can't wait for this next patch, though, to see all those new Night Goblin units. But the Goblin Wolf Riders are coming up and around here, and then my second group is also coming through the woods here. But unfortunately, I was ambushed by those flagellants. But these guys are coming in hard here, and they're so fast with that 94 speed. But my opponent does react. He pulls some flagellants and is able to intercept some of them. But the rest of the pack's actually going to get through and ride right into these guys and do some solid damage. So this entire group's shut down, and also that cannon is going to be shut down at this time. And the other group of Night Goblins was able to outmaneuver the flagellants and come around and just do great work. For 300 resources apiece, you're shutting down these cannons, you're shutting down these missile troops, and just look at this mess back here. He's having to pull greatswords and flagellants, and that kind of screws up his front line as well. And also the timing of it is quite good, because now my front line is advancing, and some of his units back here are going to be out of position. So, and again, the Goblin Wolf Riders very fast. They're able to just escape off into the distance, and you know, at the same time, my front line's going to engage. So the Arachnox Spider comes in, and Arachnox, it obviously engaging them on the Spearman was a bit of a mistake, but over here, engaging it on Greatswords is exactly what you want. They'll just tear Greatswords to pieces. And Karl Franz does land, and Karl will do pretty well against his Spider, who's also taking quite a bit of cannon fire. But you can see these Greatswords have also taken about 30% of their HP damage. And the Night Goblins here with the sneaky stabbing, you know, giving them that melee attack and the armor-piercing stats are going to do pretty darn good. And also, let's go ahead and take a look at these Greatswords, who are now steady in regards to their leadership, but they their combat stats are quite a bit lower than they should be, you know, with the poison. So definitely a big fan of that. My Goblin Archers are kind of just teeing off onto his missile units here. You can see those 3 groups of the Goblin Archers, and then of course the Goblin Wolf Riders are just running amok. It's so hard to keep up with them. They're just such a fast unit, and essentially I'm just trying to clean up all of his missile units, so then I can kind of have free range to harass and just utilize my my lads effectively. So those crossbowmen have most certainly been wiped out, and you can see the Doom Divers back here still applying pressure. And you know, the Goblins will rout, and something is, if you do want to play a lad army, just constantly be checking, because they're going to rout off all day. As even the infantry, you can see my Night Goblins here in the front, though they're at like 60%, they're shaking, they're fleeing, but you know, they'll always come back. But you can see the Goblins coming back, and they're just, you know, taking out these cannon crews, which is excellent value. So in the front line, Karl Franz is continuing to pressure this Arachnox Spider, and thankfully now that the cannons are offline, he doesn't have a lot of great tools against these Arachnoids, except the Spearmen. But you know, again, even them, they're not that great against them. So the Goblin Archers here are just teeing off on Karl Franz. You can see like 4 groups of missile troops just shooting him. He's poisoned. You can see his move speed is down to 69, and of course that Arachnox Spider hits like an absolute truck. And the Spearmen, you know, they're kind of breaking too. The Arachnox Spider does cause terror, if I'm not mistaken. Does it? I'm not sure if it does. Yeah, I think it does. I just think it's not in the tooltip. So a lot of these low-tier Spearmen are going to, you know, have trouble, you know, dealing with it. They're going to constantly be breaking. And also the Night Goblins are poisoning them, and it's also very hard to flee from poison units. So he's going to take lots of casualties when they do break. Over here, the Greatswords, of course, are holding it down, but you know, they've just been fighting these Night Goblins one-on-one pretty much. With, of course, the Doom Divers were shooting in here and some Goblins, but you know, for the most part, these guys and these Spearmen and other units over here, these Greatswords, are definitely taking a beating. The poison really lowers their stats. Let's go ahead and take a look here. So their weapon strength is down to, what is it, 26? So yeah, that's quite a bit lower than I think the 32 they actually start with. So very happy with that outcome. My Arachnox Spiders are continuing to push through the enemy's forces. He does have some Flagellants continuing to hold the line. I'm not sure what's going on with this guy right here. He's kind of just doing a weird little move there. But he does have some Empire Captains also who are coming in to continue to pressure. But for the most part, let's go ahead and take an overhead view. So the Goblin Wolf Riders did an excellent job just decimating that back line. You can see a lot of routing low units here. And the Goblin Wolf Riders are still continuing to chase down fleeing units. And that's something that I think is just one of the most valuable assets, because you know, Spearmen and, you know, even Greatswords or, you know, Cannon Crews, more often than not, Cannon Crews will get routed and will come back as they are here, but the Goblin Wolf Riders have just been so effective at chasing them down. So, and also, in shutting down those cannons, those were pretty much the only answer to those Arachnox Spiders. Once those cannons were shut down, he had a few groups of Spearmen, but they were mostly enveloped with Night Goblins, so they weren't able to kind of do their piece. And also the Goblin Archers, though they are, you know, very, very low tier when it comes to missile troops, if you have several groups of them, like focusing enemy heroic units, especially with the support of the Poison Knight Goblin Archers, they can really wear them down and take out enemy crossbowmen very, very well. So over here, it looks like the last of the Greatswords are indeed routing off, and I think that's mostly it. He does have some Flagellants left, and he does have an Empire Captain here who's getting all kinds of crossfire, and even the Goblin Great Shaman, who actually did take a little bit of a beating earlier from Karl, is able to get in the mix with his stats, but he's got pretty low combat stats for a heroic unit, and also, you know, just low defensive stats. You have to be very, very careful when using the Night Goblin Great Shaman, but he's not a Night Goblin, but just the Great Shaman. Such a cool unit. And man, I cannot wait to experiment with some new lad armies with the squid herds, and also using the new armor-piercing Goblin infantry, and just all kinds of new units coming in this next DLC. So it should be a lot of fun. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that GOBO matchup there. It was definitely a lot of fun for me. So you can see, look at the 80 kills on these Night Goblins. I mean, that's really good. And even, you know, this many kills on Goblin Archers is pretty effective. The Goblin Wolf Riders did their piece, but of course the Arachnox Spiders are indeed the backbone of this game. Just a very strong unit, especially when they're supported by fodder. Because again, they have like 150 armor. So if Spearmen are on them, they do have anti-large, but they don't have that like armor piercing to get through that armor, especially when their stats are lowered by the Night Goblins. So very cool there. And of course, the Doom Divers, you guys saw, they were able to kind of pick off the crossbowmen before the battle even really started. So great value out of those. And then the crossbowmen were also one of the answers he needed against these Arachnox, kind of that focused missile fire. So in terms of the synergy of everything, I think it went pretty well. For my opponent, the great swords, of course, are, high tier infantry, but 66 kills against mostly night goblins isn't that much. The flagellants actually did surprisingly well. They cut through a lot of the lads and definitely fought to the death. So anyways, very well played to my opponent, Evocatus Magin. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that lad cast. Have an excellent night and take care.